Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're not just falling asleep to a story, you are the story. So close your eyes and imagine this. The air is thick with the scent of olive oil, charcoal smoke, and something less pleasant. Maybe spoiled fish. You wake up on a damp cobblestone alley near the Tiber River, Rome, the year 50 BCE. You're slumped against a faded plaster wall, wrapped in a coarse woolen tunica that definitely wasn't washed this week. Your satchel smells like crushed mint and goat leather. And surprise, you're a midwife, a Roman one. And if you're thinking, great, a relaxing day of helping new life into the world, well, not so fast. The maternal mortality rate in ancient Rome is, to put it politely, not ideal. Neither is yours, honestly. Sanitation? Optional. Anesthesia? That's a firm no. Professional respect? Let's just say male physicians aren't thrilled to share the spotlight with a woman who actually knows how to deliver a breech birth in a pitch-dark storeroom. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the blurry chaos of morning Rome. A donkey brays in protest nearby. He's tangled in someone's laundry line. A child shrieks joyfully while chasing a chicken across the alley. You stagger upright, muscles stiff from sleeping on stone, and check your satchel. Sponge swabs, strips of clean linen, dried pennyroyal leaves, a tiny bronze figurine of Juno Lucina, the goddess of childbirth. Good. You're still you, or at least you're her now. There's no time to ponder what's happening. A harried woman appears at the corner, breathless and pale. Obstetrics? She gasps. You nod reflexively. Yes, that's you. A neighbor's wife is in labor, and she's been moaning since midnight. You're led through winding alleyways that smell like vinegar and last night's stew. The insula, a tall, timber-framed apartment block, is cracked and slumping a little, its fourth floor charred from an old fire. On the second floor, in a cramped room lit by a flickering oil lamp, a young woman lies sweating on a straw-stuffed mattress. Her husband paces nervously, looking like he's about to either cry or pass out. Probably both. You crouch beside her, doing your best to smile. Her belly is taut with contractions, and her feet are swollen. One hand clutches a small carved token. It's probably been blessed at a temple. The air reeks of anxiety, warm bodies, and stale bread. Time to work. You wash your hands with the vinegar water you brought, wishing for even a single bar of soap. It's a breech position, feet first, and things could get tricky. You call for olive oil, rags, and boiled water. Not that it'll be sterile, but hey, boiling's better than nothing. You kneel on a folded cloak, wedge your hands gently but firmly where they need to go, and whisper an invocation to Juno Lucina. Outside, a vendor is yelling about pickled onions. Inside, the baby is halfway out and the mother is screaming Latin profanities you didn't even know existed. You keep your voice calm, though inside you're frantically praying to every deity, Juno, Diana, even Janus for good measure. The baby slips free, purple and slick. No crying. You rub its back with a scrap of linen. Still nothing. You take a gentle puff of breath into its tiny mouth, then flip it over and give a light tap. Finally, a wet wail breaks through the room. The mother sobs. The husband looks like he might faint. You quietly tie off the cord with a boiled thread and begin wrapping the baby in cloth. There are no medals for this. No applause. But the mother looks up at you with utter relief, and that's enough. You place the baby in her arms and offer her a sip of honeyed wine. She calls you a miracle worker. You don't correct her. You leave a small sachet of dried myrrh and rue under her pillow. It's supposed to ward off infection, though historians still argue whether any of these remedies actually helped. Some of them almost certainly made things worse. One midwife swore by goose grease. Another favored wrapping the newborn's head in red wool to prevent lunar influence. No one agrees on anything except, don't drop the baby. You trudge back into the street, the sun higher now. Your feet are sore and your back aches. You pass a graffiti-scrawled wall with a familiar joke. Lucius loves Cornelia more than beans. Classic. A merchant offers you some pomegranate seeds for your trouble. You nod your thanks. The juice is tart and sweet, refreshing, even if the man probably didn't wash his hands after handling that pig carcass. Still, you made it through your first delivery. You didn't faint, nobody died, and the husband didn't throw up on your sandals. All things considered, a solid start to your new life as a Roman midwife. And the day is just beginning. You barely make it back to your one room to burn a home. A cramped space above a shop that smells faintly of onions and singed wool, when someone pounds on your door like a centurion on tax day. It's a lanky teenager, eyes wide and panicked. "It's my aunt," he blurts. "Something's wrong. She's been moaning for hours. She says the baby's stuck. No rest for the obstetrics." You sling your satchel over your shoulder again, still crusted with dried birth fluids, and follow him through Rome's maze-like streets. Pigeons flutter off rooftops. A funeral procession meanders past, flanked by mourners wailing theatrically and one man who's clearly just there for the free bread. The boy leads you into another insula, this one marginally less dilapidated. The stairwell groans as you climb. Inside a cramped third-floor apartment, you're hit with heat, incense, and the unmistakable scent of old cabbage. The woman on the bed groans, clutching her belly. You can tell immediately this is going to be difficult. You kneel beside her and gently examine her swollen abdomen. The baby's position isn't ideal, and the mother's exhausted. You ask for silence, but the room is full of whispering women offering advice you didn't ask for. One suggests massaging her earlobes. Another insists she chew fennel soaked in goat's milk. You keep your tone calm. Someone boil water. Someone else find clean cloth. And please, please, open a window. They all shuffle off in a flurry of opinions and curiosity, giving you space to work. You've dealt with worse. You remember one time, back when you were still new, you helped deliver twins in a fishmonger's cellar, using only a cracked mirror, a wooden spoon, and your own resolve. You still have a scar on your thumb from that one. Salted eel tanks are not hygienic. The mother screams as another contraction grips her. You place a warm cloth across her belly and whisper encouragement. It's strange how little has changed. Modern or ancient, birth is still a battle, and you're the field nurse with nothing but grit and vinegar. As you reach into your satchel for olive oil, your fingers brush something round and warm, your lucky bronze spoon. You use it to apply pressure gently, shifting the baby's position with slow, practiced hands. It's not exactly comfortable for her, but she's past the point of noticing anything but pain. Eventually, after what feels like a decade compressed into minutes, the baby slips free, red and slippery as a plum. A healthy wail follows. You breathe out, finally. You wrap the infant, hand it to a relieved relative, and check the mother's pulse. Strong. Sweaty, but strong. In the corner, someone mutters a prayer to Bona Dea, the women's goddess. Another offers you a cup of barley wine, which you accept. It tastes like sour mushrooms. Still, it hits the spot. The mother clutches your arm. "Bless you," she whispers, teary-eyed. "I thought I was going to die." You nod, quietly, because truthfully she might have. Women do die, frequently. Historians still argue whether maternal death rates were as high as 1 in 50 births, or even worse in poorer districts like this. There's no official census, just funeral masks and women who don't come to the market anymore. You pocket a few denarii, payment for the birth, plus a small tip in the form of dates wrapped in fig leaves, and head out. The streets are louder now. Children shouting, vendors hawking cheap perfume, a woman trying to sell live chickens from under her cloak. You pass a graffiti wall covered in scratched names and one drawing that you hope is a gladiator and not a particularly muscular snail. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your sandals slap wet stone. You dodge a puddle that's suspiciously warm and definitely not water. You're bone-tired, but there's pride in your gait. You've seen inside life itself, literally, and coaxed it into the world twice before noon. Not many people can say that, and certainly not many men. Most Roman physicians, especially the Greek imports, turn up their noses at midwifery. Too messy, too womanly, too beneath them. And yet, when something goes terribly wrong in a patrician villa, Guess who they quietly summon? You. You reach your door just as the sky clouds over, bringing with it the faint smell of summer rain and sewage. You light a small oil lamp, set your satchel down, and collapse on the straw mat you call a bed. For a moment, all you hear is the flicker of flame and the muffled hum of street life below. You try not to think about how many women won't wake up tomorrow. Instead, you stretch your aching limbs, sip a bit of stale wine from a clay cup, and remind yourself of something you were once told by an older midwife. You can't save them all, but you can save some, and that's enough. Then a thought hits you. You've been on your feet since sunrise, and there's no telling what the rest of this day will bring. You wake from your brief nap with a stiff neck, a dry mouth, and the creeping sensation that you forgot something important. The lamp has burned low, casting sleepy gold shadows across your walls. Walls papered in soot, pressed herbs, and the faint outline of a handprint you don't remember making. Time to take stock. Your satchel lies open like a gaping mouth on the floor, spilling its contents. Crushed fennel seeds, several lengths of clean linen, a splintery bone needle, and a bundle of dried rue wrapped in wax cloth. You kneel with a soft grunt and start repacking. This, too, is part of the work. Quiet preparation. 1,000 little things you carry because you never know what you'll walk into. Let's see. Bronze forceps, you don't like using them unless you have to, and even then, you whisper a quick apology to the baby first. The grip is delicate but unforgiving. One wrong move and you've traded life for a lullaby that never starts. Sponge on a stick, not just for post-birth cleanup. Occasionally doubles as a weapon against grabby husbands or nosy in-laws. Poppy syrup, dangerous in the wrong dose, but a gift when someone's shaking with pain. You keep it in a little clay vial with a boar scratched on the side. You're not sure who carved it. Probably you, on one of those nights where sleep wasn't happening. Ceramic burner, you use it to smolder thyme and myrrh during difficult labors. Not that smoke helps, but people seem to think it does, and sometimes that's enough. Then there's your birthing amulet, a bronze charm shaped like a womb, worn smooth with thumb rubs. It's strung on a leather cord and allegedly blessed by a priest of Minerva. You're not convinced he was sober at the time. You also carry a small wooden birthing stool, foldable, with a suspiciously wobbly leg. You've repaired it twice with kitchen twine. It's awkward to carry around Rome streets. Gets you strange looks, but it's better than kneeling on filthy floors. And a seated birth is often safer, especially when you need gravity to do its thing. You finish repacking just as the sky rumbles. Rain begins to fall. Not dramatic, just a tired drizzle, like the city's exhaling after a long tantrum. You set your bag aside and sit at your low table sorting herbs. You crush some dried mint into a small dish. Good for calming the belly. Next to it, dried sage, valerian root, and a rare treasure silphium resin, scraped into curls like gold shavings. You paid dearly for it, and it's dwindling. No one even knows where the plant grows anymore. Historians still argue whether it's extinct or just really good at hiding. Silphium was said to help with birth control, among other things, but Roman law is sketchy about women even possessing it. If a man caught you with it, he could claim you were tampering with fate or worse, status. So you keep it wrapped in fish skin, hidden behind a cracked figurine of Vesta. You clean your tools next. Bronze blades dulled by blood and time. You sharpen them with a pumice stone and lay them on linen to dry. No one thinks of a midwife as a surgeon, but sometimes you have to be. Episiotomies aren't exactly fashionable, but you've done them. You've also cut cords, drained abscesses, and once removed a shard of amphora from a woman's thigh after she slipped during labor. Still have the shard, actually. You use it as a paperweight. You glance at your shelf of talismans. There's a tiny carved frog from Egypt, gifted by a grateful client. It's supposed to bring fertility. There's also a wax tablet with the names of the 24 babies you've helped deliver this season, each with a tiny etched mark beside the name if the mother lived. You don't want to think about how many don't have a second mark. The rain picks up. You open your window to the scent of wet stone and simmering lentils from the shop below. Someone sings off-key nearby. It's oddly comforting. You light a bit of incense, cypress, sharp and clean, and sit for a moment, just breathing. The world outside feels far away. In this moment, it's just you, the scent of herbs, and the quiet drip of rain from a broken roof tile, until there's a knock. Not urgent this time, rhythmic, hesitant. You open the door to find an old woman with cloudy eyes and a limp. She holds out a bundle wrapped in coarse cloth. Inside is a clay bottle with a cork sealed in wax. "Gift," she rasps. "For your hands." You nod. The oil inside smells like lavender and fat. Good for cracked skin. She doesn't explain who she is or why she knows you need it. She just nods and disappears into the street, melting into Rome like mist. You sit back down, rub a little oil into your hands, and smile. The job takes a toll. Your knuckles ache constantly. Your wrists pop when you flex. You sometimes feel older than the temples. But moments like this, a soft rain, a gift you didn't expect, the gentle weight of a satchel that smells like thyme and milkweed, they remind you why you keep doing it. Because you're not just catching babies. You're holding together the threads of the world. One life at a time. You're back at the communal bathhouse, and the steam hits you like a warm slap in the face. Not unpleasant, just immediate. The heavy scent of oil, sweat, and overripe citrus wraps around you like a damp blanket. You sigh and step into the tepidarium, grateful for the moment of calm, and maybe just a little bit wary, because the bathhouse isn't just for soaking sore muscles or scraping grime with a strigil. Oh no, it's also Rome's unofficial rumor mill. And as a midwife, you live or die by the whispers. You spot a group of women gathered on stone benches, their hair tied in messy coils, sandals discarded at odd angles. One waves you over, Marcia, another midwife. She's older than you, wears more bangles than strictly necessary, and has an unnerving talent for knowing when a client is going to go into labor before the baby does. "You missed a story," she says with a grin, tossing you a folded towel that still smells faintly of boiled lye. "That senator's wife? The one who swore she was barren? Pregnant. Definitely not his." The others cackle. You settle beside them, easing your tired limbs into the hot stone. Your back sings in relief. Bathhouse gossip isn't just entertainment. It's vital intel. Who's due soon? Who's quietly seeking remedies they won't speak of aloud? Who's had 3 miscarriages and still hides it from her husband? You listen with half a smile, storing facts like a squirrel with acorns. Someone hands you a little cloth bundle, mild soap, probably goat tallow and ashes. You scrub at the crooks of your elbows while Lucia, a wiry midwife with a sharp nose and sharper tongue, launches into a story about a birth she attended where the baby came out with a full head of hair and a tooth. "An omen," she whispers, eyes wide. "A soldier or a traitor, no in between." You raise an eyebrow. "Or a hungry baby." They laugh again. Even in a city of marble and senators, it's these steamy rooms that carry the real knowledge. You trade a few stories too, careful not to give names. Like the time you delivered a baby by lamplight in a cellar with rats for company, or the client who insisted on chanting to Mercury during contractions, despite you reminding her he's a messenger god, not an obstetrician. Or your own favorite, the birth where the family dog refused to leave the mother's side and ended up chewing through the linen to make a nest for the baby. You even pass around a few herbal tips. Boil chamomile for sore nipples, chew parsley for bad breath, especially important when shouting encouragement an inch from someone's face. And never, never mistake belladonna for mullein. That mistake historically ends poorly. One of the women asks if you've tried that new sponge vinegar method for pain. You blink. You've heard of it. A dampened sponge soaked in strong vinegar and herbs, applied strategically. Some say it eases contractions. Others say it just burns. Historians still argue whether Roman midwives shared remedies or fiercely guarded them. You suspect both are true. You've definitely seen Marcia forget to mention which mushroom she used until someone offered her a better strigil. After the steam, you move to the cold room, letting the chill close your pores. Your muscles feel looser, your head clearer. You drink tepid water from a chipped cup and towel off. Then comes the best part, scented oil. One of the bathhouse attendants rubs your shoulders with a blend of rose and bay leaf. You close your eyes. For 5 whole seconds, you feel like a goddess. Of course. Then Marcia leans in with that conspiratorial tone and says, "Did you hear? That Vestal client of yours? She's been visiting the Temple of Fortuna way too often, if you know what I mean." "You do. It means she's nervous. Maybe dangerously so. Vestals weren't just chaste, they were legally required to be. Any suspicion of impropriety could lead to severe consequences. Burying alive-level consequences. You file it away for later, along with a mental note to visit her discreetly. Afterward, as you dress in your freshly washed tunica, rough linen but clean, finally, you feel more like yourself again. Or at least like someone who doesn't have dried blood on her forearms. You sling your satchel over your shoulder. Feels lighter, though the same tools are inside. That's what the bathhouse does. Clears more than skin. Outside, the sun is already shifting toward orange. A vendor nearby is roasting chestnuts. You buy a handful, the warm paper wrapping burning your fingers slightly. Another long night waits, probably with screaming mothers and frantic husbands and towels that will definitely not be clean. But for now, you walk slowly through the streets of Rome, crunching chestnuts and smelling faintly of bay leaves. And it feels good. By the time you reach home again, the sky's leaning toward dusk, that strange golden hour when even the Forum smells briefly poetic, before returning to its usual bouquet of wet marble, sweat, and donkey droppings. You step into your taberna home with the quiet dignity of someone who knows there's a rat living behind the water jug and has simply accepted it. The flickering oil lamp you left burning is now a pool of soot, and your satchel lands on the table with a tired thump. Time for a little remedy prep. First, you dig out your pestle and mortar worn smooth with years of grinding everything from poppy seeds to oyster shells, and start assembling today's lineup of highly questionable cures. Because, let's be honest, being a Roman midwife isn't just about catching babies. It's also about being half herbalist, part magician, and occasional snake oil enthusiast. Emphasis on the snake. You begin with a popular classic, pennyroyal tea, said to relieve cramps and, in stronger doses, rumored to encourage the womb to let go. You brew it in a chipped clay cup, knowing full well it's both revered and feared. You sip a tiny bit, just enough to taste the bitterness, earthy and sharp like a warning. Next, you mix ashes of hedgehog spines, a genuine ingredient, believe it or not, blended with goat's milk and myrrh. Some swear it stops postpartum bleeding. Others say it causes indigestion. Frankly, no one's tested either theory with anything resembling modern rigor. Historians still argue whether these animal-based remedies were symbolic, effective, or just a desperate gamble wrapped in folk magic. Then there's your favorite, honey and vinegar compresses, good for sore abdomens, swelling, and looking vaguely like you know what you're doing. You wrap a few linen strips around a jar of the mixture and tuck it away for your next night call. And why not? You prep a dose of mole liver powder, supposedly a remedy for infertility if mixed with wine and taken under a full moon. Yes, it smells as bad as it sounds. No, you've never seen it work. But one of your clients swears she got pregnant 2 months after trying it, and that's apparently proof enough. Your little table is now a patchwork of ingredients. Dried herbs in twisted paper bundles, clay pots labeled in your cramped handwriting, and a small dish of something that looks suspiciously like crushed beetles. You really should label that one better. As you work, there's a knock at the door. You open it to find Sabina, one of your regulars, holding her belly and grimacing. "Not labor," she groans. Gas, like a chariot race inside. You let her in, light another lamp, and give her a spoonful of caraway and mint syrup. As she sips, you distract her with light chatter, local politics, the baker's new apprentice, who, rumor has it, keeps burning the bread on purpose to flirt with widows, and whether or not Mars has it out for her womb. She laughs, which helps. Then she notices your newly prepped mole powder. "Is that for the senator's niece?" she asks. You shrug. She thinks it's blessed. "I just hope she doesn't throw it up." Sabina smirks, then lies back on your cot while you press a warm compress to her stomach. The heat soothes the spasms, and before long, she's snoring softly. You let her sleep. There's something sacred about these quiet moments. Just you, the flicker of lamplight, and the knowledge that someone feels safe enough to drool on your pillow. That's trust. That's the work. Eventually, Sabina stirs and leaves with a groggy thank you, clutching a small pouch of anise seeds and instructions to drink nothing stronger than barley tea for 2 days. You sit in the silence that follows, your hands sticky with honey and herbs, and your thoughts drifting toward the unspoken parts of your job, like the clients who visit at night, cloaked in shame, asking for remedies with trembling voices and bags under their eyes, or the women who come alone, no father in sight, their fingers twisting their cloaks into knots while they ask, "Will it hurt?" and means so much more than labor. You help as best you can. Sometimes that means delivering the baby. Sometimes it means herbs. And sometimes it means sitting beside someone as they cry into a bowl of wine and whisper secrets they can't even admit to themselves. The line between midwife and magician is blurrier than you'd like. Just last week, a client asked if you could place a curse on her husband's mistress. You told her no, but you did give her a pouch of crushed rue and said it was a protective charm. She walked taller after that. People believe in what they need to, and if part of your job is letting them believe, so be it. You scrape dried honey from your fingers and glance at your tools, clean and waiting. Tomorrow you'll need more rue, more anise, and probably more patience than you have. But tonight you've done enough. You blow out the lamp, crawl onto your cot, and let the scent of time cling to your dreams. You're awoken before dawn by the soft slap of sandals outside your door and the unmistakable sound of someone trying not to knock, but deciding they must. The knock comes, hesitant but urgent. You open the door to find a boy in a fine tunic, clearly a household servant. Clean, nervous, and trying not to make eye contact. His hair is oiled, his accent clipped. Definitely patrician adjacent. He bows slightly and blurts, "The domina requests your presence." Immediately, you blink. Great. One of those days. He hands you a wax-sealed tablet, official invitation, not just word of mouth. This is serious. You scan it quickly. The name at the bottom makes your stomach tighten. Domina Calpurnia, wife of Gaius Lentulus. Old money, old grudges. Also, her sister once accused you of being too chatty with the slaves. You change into your best tunica, still off-white, but not stained with anything currently identifiable, and grab your satchel. You give it a quick once-over. Linen? Check. Poppy syrup? Check. Emergency bribe coins? Just in case. The boy leads you through Rome's twisting alleys as the city wakes around you. Vendors setting up, dogs fighting over a fish spine, a drunk still singing about Jupiter's bad aim. You pass graffiti walls with everything from crude jokes to deeply philosophical debates over sausage prices. Eventually, you arrive at the Domus, a vast house with a marble entryway, guarded by a doorman who looks like he was born frowning. Inside, everything is hushed, perfumed, and terrifyingly clean. A young girl leads you to the cubiculum, the master bedroom, where Domina Calpurnia reclines on a cushioned couch that probably cost more than your entire building. She's pale, sweating lightly, and clearly not in labor yet, but she's definitely close. Her belly is taut, and the room smells like rosewater and expensive fear. You bow politely and approach. "Finally," she says. "The physician left. Said I'm not ready. What does he know?" You resist the urge to agree too enthusiastically and begin your exam. Her pulse is strong, her eyes sharp. No fever. She's tense, though. Really tense. You ask about the baby's movement. She says it kicked all night. You glance around the room. There's a statue of Juno in the corner, draped with silk. A bronze bowl of pomegranate seeds sits untouched. A girl fans her slowly, lazily, and you can practically taste the awkward tension. The domina grabs your wrist suddenly. "It's a girl," she says. "I know it, but he wants a boy." There it is. You nod, gently removing her hand. "The gods give what they will," you say, a safe answer possibly plagiarized from a fortune teller. You set out your tools on a small table, a bone comb, your oil, the lucky spoon. Everything deliberate, calm. The domina watches your every move like a hawk in pearls. Then her husband arrives. Tall, broad, absolutely uninterested in you. He eyes his wife like a nervous investor watching his portfolio wobble. He says nothing to you directly, just mutters to the fangirl, who scurries out with surprising speed. You glance at Calpurnia. Her jaw is tight. No words, but the message is clear. Tread carefully. You reassure her. Quiet voice. Gentle touch. You pour warm oil over her belly, your fingers working in slow, practiced circles. It helps a little. She exhales for the first time in what must be hours. As you work, the husband hovers. You hate hovering. Eventually, he's distracted by a courier, and you whisper to Calpurnia, "You're safe with me. We'll do this right." She nods, almost smiles, almost. Later, in the birthing chamber, a room off the main courtyard that's usually for storage but has been scrubbed to within an inch of its life. Things begin in earnest. You've called for boiling water for comfort, not cleanliness. Instructed the servants to stay out unless needed, and lit a cone of frankincense. Labor hits fast. Calpurnia grits her teeth. She doesn't scream. Of course not. Patrician women are trained to suffer with dignity, which is ridiculous and entirely unhelpful. You hum softly as you guide her to a birthing stool. Her face tightens with pain. You press your forehead to hers briefly, just enough to break the tension, and whisper, "Let it hurt. That's how it works." The baby comes slowly, too slowly. You shift position, rotate, press gently. Hours pass. The husband pokes his head in once and wisely retreats at your glare. Finally, the baby slides free. You catch it with both hands and your entire soul. And oh, it's a girl. Healthy, pink, angry, but a girl. You clean her, swaddle her, and pass her to Calpurnia, who holds her like a fragile vase. Her eyes shimmer. She doesn't cry, but her fingers clutch yours with fierce, silent gratitude. Then she whispers, "Tell him she didn't cry right away." You freeze. That's code. An old one. If a baby doesn't cry, she might not be counted, might not be claimed, might be quietly returned to the gods. You lock eyes with her. You see it all. The fear, the calculation, the desperate hope that this tiny creature will be enough. You nod. She was blue. I worked hard. Barely brought her back. Technically not a lie. Later, you hand the baby to a nursemaid with strict instructions and a quiet bribe to keep her mouth shut. As you leave the domus, the husband doesn't even speak to you. But Calpurnia meets your gaze one last time, and nods. In that moment, you are more than a midwife. You are a protector. You're back home long enough to wash your hands. Barely. When there's another knock, you almost don't answer. But it's late. The kind of quiet hour when the sky goes indigo and the neighborhood smells like stew and smoldering lamp oil. And something about the knock, too rhythmic, too polite. You open the door to find a young man standing there, wearing a toga that screams trying too hard, and sandals laced up just a little too perfectly. His eyes are darting everywhere but yours. "You're the midwife?" he asks. You nod. "My sister. She's laboring, and she wants you to perform a ritual." Here we go. You know what that means, magic, or at least something that looks like it. Roman childbirth isn't just medicine. It's wrapped in superstition, prayer, and the occasional odd request involving owl feathers or goat urine. You once had a woman insist on giving birth while chewing fig bark and facing south because her aunt had done it and only screamed once. You grab your satchel again, adding two things you rarely bring: a wax figurine of Mars and your small scroll of birthing incantations, written phonetically, since you never had the luxury of a full education. Still, they sound good when whispered, and sometimes sounding good is half the job. The young man leads you through the Subura, Rome's lively, occasionally lawless neighborhood. It's quieter now, but you pass the usual suspects. A couple arguing over a sandal, someone feeding cats with what may or may not be garum-soaked bread, and a group of drunk actors quoting tragedy at a wall. Finally, you arrive at a tidy insula with faded frescoes on the entryway. Inside, the laboring woman is lying on a straw mattress surrounded by 4 elderly relatives, all of whom look at you like you'd better fix this or else. One of them offers you a cup of watered wine before you even speak. That's never a good sign. You kneel beside the woman. Her name is Livia, and immediately notice she's terrified. Not of the pain exactly, but of something else. She clutches a wooden amulet of Juno Lucina to her chest like it's the only thing anchoring her to this world. You take her hand. "What kind of ritual did you want?" you ask, keeping your voice low. She swallows. "My mother said you could, you know, unbind the womb." You've heard of this before. It's a folk belief. Some say that during difficult labor, the baby is being held back by spiritual knots or curses. The solution: a loosening ritual. You nod gently. "We can do that." You begin by sprinkling the floor with dried poppy petals, taken from your satchel and scattered in a clockwise spiral, symbolic of opening, softening. Then you light a cone of incense. Frankincense mixed with a pinch of henbane, just enough to make the air feel dreamy but not enough to knock anyone out. The old women murmur appreciatively. You press the wax figurine of Mars into Livia's hand, not because Mars is helpful, he isn't, but because redirecting dangerous energy is sometimes more important than invoking protection. It's all about tricking the fear into moving somewhere else. Then comes the chant. You whisper a series of syllables, half Latin, half borrowed from a Syrian midwife you once trained under. It's nonsense, really, but it sounds like ancient power. And more importantly, it calms the room. You run olive oil across her belly in long, slow strokes, murmuring, "Unbind, unfold, open the door." Like a lullaby, the older women start joining in, low and rhythmic. It becomes a pulse in the room, soft, slow, deliberate. And then, something shifts. Livia gasps. A contraction hits, stronger this time. You see the baby shift inside her belly. You give a small smile and nod. "It's working," you whisper. Over the next hour, labor progresses quickly. You guide Livia through it with a mix of herbs, pressure, and tone of voice sorcery. The chanting has faded, but the sense of safety remains. And when the baby finally arrives, a boy strong and loud, you swear you can feel the tension vanish from the very walls. Livia cries. The old women cry. Even the overly polished brother wipes a tear and pretends it's dust. You clean the baby, wrap him, and lay him gently on his mother's chest. She clutches him with wonder, still whispering bits of the chant to herself. You linger a little longer than usual. There's something about this birth, something that made you remember why you started this work in the first place. Not just to deliver babies, but to make fear leave the room. The old women press a bundle of coins into your hand and insist on sending you away with a small pouch of dried apricots. You don't argue. You love apricots. Back out in the Subura, the wind has picked up. Laundry flaps overhead. A cat scampers past with a crust of bread in its mouth. And above it all, the moon hangs huge and silver, like a dish the gods left behind. You adjust your satchel, whisper a thank you to whoever was listening, and head home. You're almost at your door, almost when you remember you're out of silphium. Again, it's not the kind of thing you pick up at the market next to lentils and leeks. You have to know a guy, and that guy moves around, and always acts like he's doing you a favor, even though you're the one paying 5 times what it's worth in grain. You sigh, double back toward the merchant quarter, and brace yourself for the particular chaos of Roman back alley medicine dealing. The alley is predictably aromatic, part goat, part roasted garlic, with an undercurrent of something you'd rather not name. It's where legitimate apothecaries blur into folk healers, smugglers, and self-proclaimed oracles who'll sell you powdered unicorn horn that smells suspiciously like crushed snail shell. You find the stall you're looking for wedged between a butcher and a man selling dubious cures, involving frogs' livers and prayers to Neptune. It's more of a tent than a stall, really. An awning flapping above crates stacked with jars, powders, dried plants, and what may or may not be a pickled lizard in wine. The seller is Phoenician. You don't know his real name, but he insists everyone call him Felix, which you're pretty sure means lucky in Latin, though nothing about him says luck. His robe is fraying. His eyes are clever. His fingers grimy. "You again," he says, grinning. "Run out of miracles?" "Ran out of silphium," you reply, setting a handful of worn coins on his table. He snorts. Of course, everyone wants silphium. He pretends to look under the table. He's stalling. "You've done this dance before." "Save me the theater," you mutter. You keep it in the pouch around your neck. He freezes, then slowly pulls it out. A small wax-wrapped bundle. Enough for 2, maybe 3 doses if you're careful. You eye it like gold. Last of it, he lies. Right, you say. And I'm Neptune's niece. He leans forward, conspiratorial. You know, the Greeks say silphium grows still. Hidden. North Africa, maybe. Or some island where the goats chew it for breakfast. Historians still argue about that. You say, not because you read it in a scroll, but because everyone argues about silphium, its disappearance, its power, whether it ever existed as described. Felix throws in a sprig of dried mandrake root. Gift, he says, like he's just handed you his own spleen. You nod your thanks, though you're not sure if it's mandrake or just an ugly carrot with delusions of grandeur. As you're about to leave, you spot something odd tucked beneath a cloth. A vial of saffron, bright and rich, the real stuff, worth more than your sandals, maybe more than your dignity. You raise an eyebrow. How'd you get that? Felix smirks. Don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. You don't press, but you do by a pinch. It'll help with womb pain, and also it just smells nice. A rare luxury in a profession where most things reek. You wrap your treasures carefully and head out of the alley, slipping back into the main road where life pulses with late-day urgency. Vendors barking, horses clattering past, children squabbling over a ball of rags. You pause near a fountain to rinse your hands. A little boy offers you a fig, sticky and half-bitten. You decline with a smile. As you walk, you can't help thinking how absurd your shopping list would sound to anyone from a future century. Silphium, mandrake, dried sparrow heart. You could build a magical army or poison a senate with your satchel. But in your hands, these things are tools. Lifelines. You've given women a few more days of comfort. You've helped them sleep when sleep was a distant dream. You've even stopped a few from bleeding out. Not because the gods intervened, because you did. Still, it's not lost on you how much of your trade is balanced on a knife's edge between science and sorcery. One wrong dose, one bad route, one counterfeit ingredient, and someone pays the price. But you do your best. You double-check your bundles. You listen to your clients when no one else will. And when they ask if the potion will work, you tell them, yes, if you believe it. Because sometimes belief is what tips the scales. As dusk turns to dark, you pass a priest of Apollo preaching about purity and prayer. You nod politely, then duck down the alley to your street, where someone's cooking lentils and arguing with their parrot. Back home, you tuck your purchases into their hiding spots, beneath the floor tile, behind the clay jar of barley, inside a hollowed-out copy of the sayings of Cato, which you mostly use to squash spiders. You sit by the oil lamp and crush the mandrake into powder. Not for tonight, but for someone soon. Then you mix a bit of saffron with olive oil and dab it on your wrists. Just because you're surrounded by birth and blood and bellyaches doesn't mean you can't smell good. Outside, Rome hums. Inside, you rest. At least for now. You don't get the full night of sleep you were vaguely hoping for. Of course not. That would be too kind. Instead, you're woken by a frantic, off-rhythm knock that screams panic and possibly feet involved. You lurch upright from your mat, hair stuck to your cheek and one sandal already half on. Before you can even grumble, the door bursts open. It's Gaius, the apprentice from the amphora shop 2 streets down. Barely 16, pale as goat's milk, and sweating through his tunic. She's in labor, he blurts. In the back, by the wine jars, and it's not going well. You blink, grab your satchel, and resist the urge to ask, why the wine jars? Instead, you follow him down the street, ducking past still sleepy market stalls and one very opinionated rooster. The amphora shop is dim, full of clanking echoes and the sharp, fermented scent of vinegar-soaked clay. You step carefully. Every surface is glazed with the kind of dust that makes you want to sneeze in Latin. In the back storeroom, among rows of massive, upright clay jars, you find the woman. She's perched on a folded burlap sack, legs shaking, hair plastered to her forehead. Her name is Celine, and you've met her once, weeks ago when she came by asking if figs could stop heartburn. Answer, sort of. She locks eyes with you now, and they're full of pure panic. You kneel beside her, take her hand, and feel the pulse. Rapid. She's close. Water, you call. Clean cloth. And Gaius? Breathe. Because yes, poor Gaius is turning a shade that suggests he's about to either faint or apologize to the gods in advance. You nudge a crate toward him. Sit. Try not to break anything. You check Celine's position, baby's engaged, crowning already. Good. Quick labor, likely second or third child. You ask her softly, "Have you done this before?" She nods, wincing. One. Still in swaddles. Okay. Not her first rodeo, but it's clear she wasn't expecting this to be the day. Her breath comes in shallow gasps, hands white-knuckled on a piece of old curtain. You spread a cloth under her, light your tiny oil lamp, because of course there's no real light back here, and begin your work. The baby's head appears within minutes, slick and perfect. Outside, someone yells about a wine delivery, entirely unaware that a new Roman citizen is about to arrive 2 steps away from their best vintage. Then crisis. The baby pauses. Shoulders are stuck. You've seen this before, shoulder dystocia, and you don't panic. You shift Celine's position, gently pressing her knees up and apart. You murmur something calming, though what you say is mostly nonsense. Think of olives, floating in warm oil, just drifting along. Hey, whatever works. You guide your fingers carefully, rotate the baby just enough, and there it is. With a wet, jubilant rush, the baby slides into your arms, red and yowling like it's already mad about the economy. You wrap it in linen, clear its nose with a twisted scrap of wool, and press it against Celine's chest. She's crying, laughing, possibly both. You help her settle onto a proper blanket. Thank you, Gaius, who at this point has done nothing but look terrified and occasionally make strangled eep noises. You did beautifully. You whisper to her, cleaning and inspecting both mother and child. No tearing. Minimal bleeding. Honestly, could have been worse. Then Celine looks at you, confused. But the pains started just an hour ago. You shrug. Some babies are just in a rush. Probably doesn't want to miss Saturnalia. She laughs weakly. You offer her a pinch of saffron in warm water to help with the afterpains and give the baby one last inspection. Sturdy limbs, strong lungs, no extra fingers. All good. Then you look at Gaius. Still sitting. Still pale. You hand him the swaddled infant. Here. Hold this. He jerks like you've asked him to pet a basilisk. But he takes the bundle, carefully, tenderly. He blinks. The baby blinks back. And for a moment, Gaius is still, like he's been handed the secret to the universe in an armful of damp linen. You gather your tools, gently collect your soiled cloths, and write Celine's name on your tablet. Another successful delivery. Another human safely into the world. You exhale deeply. You accept payment in the form of a wedge of cheese and a sealed bottle of something that might be wine or might be vinegar, and step out into the sun. The city has fully awakened. Carts rumble by, kids shout, and someone's already juggling in the forum. The world rolls on. But behind you, in a shop that smells like yeast and clay, a new mother hums softly to her newborn. And that's your work. Messy, holy, often done in the back room behind the wine. The next day, you're elbow deep in boiling linen and halfway through rearranging your herb jars when there's another knock. Less frantic this time. More official. You open the door and immediately regret it. Standing before you is a man wearing a lacerna, a woolen cloak too clean for this part of town, flanked by a scribe with a wax tablet already in hand. The cloaked man raises an eyebrow and says, "You are the obstetrix known as Fulvia? That's you. And you don't like where this is going." "There's a matter of civic interest," he says, in the same tone one might use to announce a sewer backup. "Your presence is requested at the Basilica regarding a legal dispute." Wonderful. Nothing says relaxing afternoon like a Roman paternity scandal. You follow them across the city to the Basilica, Rome's open-air legal hall, where matters great and small unfold beneath soaring arches and endless scrolls. You pass vendors selling figs, orators shouting themselves hoarse, and one man loudly claiming he's the lost son of Aeneas. He isn't. Inside, the scene is already simmering. At one end, a senator's mistress stands with her arms folded and jaw clenched. At the other, the senator in question, Lucius something importantius, is massaging his temple like this whole thing is happening to him. In between them, a birth token, a carved ivory disc with the date of birth, the baby's weight, and a name. It's missing its mate, which would have been given to the father to claim the child. Your job? Say whether or not this child was delivered by you, and whether the timeline makes sense. Easy, right? Except you don't remember. You've delivered so many babies this season alone, and patrician births aren't exactly uncommon. The scribe clears his throat. You were paid by the Lady Agrippina. This sum on this date, yes? He holds up a scratched name and a crude symbol you vaguely recognize. A three-legged stool, your old sign. Well, that does narrow it down. You nod slowly. Yes, she had a boy. Healthy. Screamed like a trumpet. Agrippina smiles faintly. The senator glares. And did the father attend the birth? The scribe asks. You blink. No, of course not. They rarely do. Especially not when the mother is technically their mistress, and their wife is at her family's estate. None the wiser. The scribe nods, recording every word in practice scratches. Then comes the kicker. Did the lady declare who the father was at the time of birth? You hesitate. This is where midwifery becomes politics. Because declaring paternity in Rome is more than naming names. It's inheritance, social standing, even citizenship. One wrong word and someone ends up disinherited. Or worse. You glance at Agrippina. She looks at you with a mix of pleading and defiance. A woman with very little left to lose. You say slowly, she said the father was of senator's rank. That's all she said. Not a lie, not the whole truth, but enough to satisfy the scribes. The senator huffs. She seduced a musician 2 months before that birth. You raise an eyebrow. If it was a musician's baby, sir, it must have borrowed your nose on the way out. Snorts echo around the basilica. Even the scribe smirks. The proceedings go on a while longer. Legal talk, murmured arguments, and a brief dramatic interruption when a clientus faints from standing too long. But eventually, the matter is settled with the quiet grace of Roman bureaucracy. Unresolved but formally recorded. You're handed a small purse of coins for your time and a sealed note from Agrippina herself. You open it later under a fig tree and find just 5 words. Thank you. He is mine. You sit in the dappled shade and let out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. This part of the job, the courtroom drama, the desperate glances, the balancing act between medicine and morality, it's less glamorous than it sounds. But it's vital, because who else stands in that space between birth and society? Between women and the men who decide their children's fates? You do. You remember a time a few years back when a freedwoman delivered twins and the father, a spice merchant, insisted they couldn't be his because he never ate figs during the month of conception. That day, you learn to smile politely and kick men under the table. You leave the basilica and drift through the forum, where someone selling hand-carved dolls and a bearded man offers to read your destiny for 3 sesterces and a boiled egg. You pass. At home, you count the coins. Enough for extra oil. Maybe even a new tunic. The old one is starting to resemble a cheesecloth. Then you sit by the window, rubbing rosemary oil into your wrists, and watch the people of Rome drift past. So many lives, each with a beginning, each perhaps touched by you. You'll never be famous. You won't get a statue or a forum named in your honor, but you'll get something better. The knowledge that behind every powerful family, every marble column, every senator's smug expression, there's a midwife who caught someone's first breath in a room full of sweat and prayer and linen. And maybe that's enough. You're halfway through boiling linen, again, when you hear the softest knock you've had all week. So quiet, in fact, you almost think you imagined it. But it comes again, like a secret trying not to be heard. You open the door to find a figure in a plain gray cloak with the hood drawn low. She steps in before you even invite her, glancing both ways down the alley like she expects to be followed. Once inside, she pushes the hood back and your heart skips. She's a Vestal virgin. Her hair is cropped in the traditional style, her expression trained into neutrality. But beneath it, there's tension. She smells faintly of beeswax and lavender, and she's holding her stomach. You know better than to say her name aloud. Instead, you motion silently to the stool by your fire. She sits like she hasn't sat in hours, hands folded over a belly she's trying not to acknowledge. "Something's wrong," she says softly. You offer her a warm cup of barley tea, and she takes it with shaking fingers. When she finally meets your eyes, her voice is barely above a whisper. "I haven't bled in 3 moons. You nod slowly, not surprised, not even shocked, but cautious. The Vestal Virgins are Rome's holiest women, sworn to chastity for 30 years, protectors of the eternal flame. Breaking that vow is not a slap on the wrist. It's being buried alive in a chamber with a lamp and a loaf of bread. Symbolic mercy, apparently. Are you certain? You ask. She gives a bitter laugh. I'm trained to know the rhythms of my own body. Yes. You examine her discreetly. Light palpation, a glance at her eyes. She's early. No obvious signs. But the signs don't need to be obvious to get someone killed. You've seen this before once years ago. A different Vestal. She didn't make it. You weigh your words carefully. There are herbs, possibilities, depending on what you want. She doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she reaches into her cloak and hands you a small carved charm. A miniature she-wolf, symbol of Rome itself. He gave me this, she says. Swore no one would find out. Who? You ask, though you already have suspicions. She shakes her head. No names. Smart. You get up, pull your mortar and pestle from the shelf, and begin grinding pennyroyal with a pinch of dried silphium and a smudge of myrrh. You stir slowly, deliberately, letting the warm scent fill the room. She watches, silent, knowing better than to ask for reassurance. Historically, these concoctions are controversial. Some say they worked, sometimes. Others argue they were dangerous, symbolic at best. Historians still debate whether Roman women knew what they were doing or simply hoped hard enough to make anything happen. But you know this much. Sometimes the act of choosing is power enough. You hand her the warm infusion and wait. She drinks it in 3 steady gulps, no expression. When she sets the cup down, she finally speaks again. If this works, I will return. If it doesn't, I never came here. You nod once. You won't say a word. She leaves as quietly as she came, and for a while the room is still. You sit by the fire, staring at the flickering shadows, thinking about how many secret lives walk Rome's streets. Women with public vows and private fears. Women who carry the whole weight of law, religion, and society in their wombs, and still find the courage to knock on your door. You glance at the cup she left behind. You'll wash it later, or maybe not. You lie back on your mat, heart still fluttering from the encounter, because you've touched something sacred, and dangerous, and very, very real. Just before sleep claims you, you remember something the old midwife who trained you once said. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is whisper. You wake to the sound of clumsy humming and something clattering in your apothecary jars. For a half moment, you think you've finally snapped, maybe a ghost or worse, a squirrel has taken up midwifery. Then you remember. Your apprentice. You sit up and squint toward the shelves. There she is, Tertia, 14, all knees and elbows and enthusiasm. She's holding a bundle of fennel with such reverence you'd think it was a sacred relic. I was organizing, she chirps. Also, I made a list. I think we're out of rosemary and the moldy cheese. Cheese isn't a remedy, you mumble. She grins. I was hoping it might be. You stretch, joints popping like knuckles on an old statue, and take in the scene. Your tiny taberna home now contains 1 extra body, and somehow, it's both messier and more charming. Tertia came to you a month ago, brought by her aunt. A baker's wife who'd lost 3 children and decided no niece of hers was going to suffer through childbirth without knowing what she was doing. You agreed to take her in on one condition. She doesn't faint at the sight of blood. So far, she's only fainted once. Technically, it was more of a polite swoon. Today is lesson day, and she's already bouncing with questions. What's this one for? She asks, holding up a dried clump of betterny. Headaches, night terrors, possibly angry wombs. You reply, tying your hair back. And this, she holds up your lucky bronze spoon. That's for stirring things, and for waving dramatically when men try to explain childbirth to us. She snorts, which you consider a good sign. You sit her down and go over the basics again. Not the flashy stuff, the herbs and the myths and the whispering spells, but the real core of the work. You wash your hands before everything. You wash your tools. You boil your cloth. If you're too tired to think, sit down and breathe. A calm midwife is a useful one. She nods solemnly, though she's currently trying to untangle 2 pieces of linen like it's advanced sorcery. Then you hand her the swaddling cloths. Practice wrapping the doll. You gesture toward your training baby. A weighted sack of barley with a painted-on smile. Tertia picks it up with exaggerated caution, as if expecting it to explode. You'll do fine, you say gently. Just keep the head supported and don't wrap it like a sausage. She concentrates, tongue between her teeth, and soon the doll is snug in a wrap that's slightly uneven and a bit crooked. But the effort is there. You guide her hands again. You're not restraining them. You're comforting them. Think of it like a hug they can't escape. Tertia grins. So, like my aunt. Exactly. You spend the next hour going over herbs for common problems. Colic, milk fever, bleeding too long, not bleeding soon enough. You test her on the difference between mugwort and wormwood, and she only mixes them up once. Progress. Then comes the important part. Bedside manner. What do you say when a woman asks if she's going to die? Tertia frowns. You tell her no? You nod. Even if you're not sure. Especially if you're not sure. But say it kindly, and mean it as much as you can. She's quiet for a moment, absorbing the weight of that. Then she asks, what if she does die? You take a long breath. Then you hold the baby, you say softly, and you remember her name. She nods. No jokes this time. Later that afternoon, you bring her along on a checkup visit to a woman you delivered 3 weeks ago. Tertia stays quiet, hands folded, but her eyes are sharp, watching everything. The way you feel for the fundus, the way you check the mother's color, the way you ask about the bleeding without making it awkward. Afterward, as you're walking back, she breaks the silence. Do they ever thank you? You smile. Sometimes. Mostly they cry, or fall asleep, or forget we exist, which is fine. We're not here for applause. Tertia kicks a pebble. I want to be good at this. You will be, you say, if you listen, if you care, and if you never, ever trust a man who says, I read about childbirth once. She laughs. You reach your home just as the light turns golden, your satchel full of drying herbs and 1 half-wrapped practice doll. You send Tertia off to fetch lentils for supper, and for the first time in days, the silence in your home feels full. Because now you're not just a midwife, you're a teacher, and maybe, just maybe, you're building something that lasts beyond you. You're pouring warm water over your hands, trying to scrape away the remnants of dried fig paste and whatever mysterious goo was on the apprentice's tunic, when a knock comes that's both familiar and vaguely theatrical. You open the door to find Dr. Hermanax, the Greek physician who runs the public clinic near the Temple of Minerva. Tall, bearded, and perpetually dressed like he's auditioning for a statue. He gives you a formal bow, which you suspect is more for show than respect. Ah, Fulvia, he says, dragging out every syllable. We are sorely in need of your practical touch. Translation. He's got a patient in labor and no clue what to do with the screaming end of things. You follow him down the narrow street, Tertia trailing behind like a duckling. She's eager to observe a real physician at work, despite your eye roll. The public clinic is a bustling, half-organized chaos. Rows of cots, groaning patients, and shelves of jars labeled in both Greek and Latin, though half of them contain what looks like dust, beetles, or possibly beetle dust. The whole place smells of vinegar, thyme, and pride. You're led to a curtained-off area where a young woman is curled up, sobbing quietly. Her name is Livia, and she's clearly in early labor, too early. Maybe 7 months. You kneel beside her, feel the taut roundness of her belly, and glance up at Hermanax. She said the pains started this morning. he mutters. I gave her a calming draught of chamomile and wine. You raise an eyebrow. And then, I observed, he says loftily. I did not want to disturb the natural humors. Yes, the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. The cornerstone of classical medicine and one of your least favorite excuses for standing around while someone labors alone. Her humors are fine, you say. Her baby, on the other hand, is trying to arrive fashionably early. Tertia stands to the side, eyes wide, watching as you gently position Livia on her side and rub her back in slow circles. You explain softly that the baby might come now or it might not, that you'll do everything you can, that it's okay to be afraid. Livia grips your hand, hard. Is it too soon? She asks. You don't lie. It's early, but not impossible. Hermanax clears his throat. The texts suggest cold compresses might. You wave him off. The texts never birthed a breech baby in a broom closet. Let me work. He retreats with what little dignity he can salvage. You guide Livia through the contractions, applying warm cloths, whispering reassurances, and pressing just the right pressure points at her hips. You even let Tertia hold the oil lamp, though not without a whispered, "Don't drop it or we'll both cry." The baby arrives in a rush of limbs and fluid. Tiny, quiet. You clear its nose and mouth, rub its back gently, then harder. For a terrifying moment, nothing. Then a gasp. A cry weak but real. You exhale, smile, and wrap the child in warm linen. Livia sobs with relief. Hermanax peers around the curtain like a curious owl. Ah, excellent. A healthy specimen. Likely female. You shoot him a look. Still has lungs. That's what matters today. He nods solemnly, pretending that was his priority all along. Later, as you wash your hands in a chipped basin, he approaches. I admit, he says, I undervalued your methods. They are efficient. Life tends to prefer efficient, you reply. He strokes his beard. Perhaps we could collaborate more often. Blend tradition with, experience. You consider this. Hermanax, for all his preening, does know how to set a bone and stitch a wound. And, to his credit, he didn't faint today. We'll see, you say. But next time, don't wait until she's halfway through labor to call for help. He nods and departs, probably to scribble something very flattering about himself on a scroll. On the way home, Tertia is buzzing. That was amazing, she says. You were like a priestess with a towel. You laugh. Just years of mess and practice. And knowing when to ignore a man with a scroll. She tilts her head. But aren't they trained? They're trained in theory, you reply. We're trained in screaming, bleeding, and figuring it out when the head's stuck and the water's boiling over. She nods solemnly. I think I prefer that. You pat her shoulder. Good, because that's the job. Back home, you write Livia's name on your wax tablet with a small asterisk. Early birth. Survived. You smile. Another tiny victory. And you remind yourself, science and superstition may duel forever, but the baby still needs catching, and you're still the one holding out your hands. It starts with whispers. You hear them at the bathhouse first. Two older women scrubbing their arms and gossiping a little too loudly. Something about a stillbirth. Something about herbs. Something about a midwife who's not quite Roman enough. Whatever that means. You ignore it. You've heard worse. Then, the baker's wife passes you on the street and doesn't nod. The fishmonger, usually full of cheerful vulgarity, just grunts. By mid-morning, someone hurls a date pit at your door. And then a knock comes, not the polite kind. The sharp, accusatory kind. It's a priest from the Temple of Jupiter, flanked by two local lictors with short staffs and long faces. Fulvia, he says with a practiced frown. There's been a report. You cross your arms. Of witchcraft, in relation to the recent stillbirth in the house of Claudius Severus. You remember that case. It was a hard labor, the mother already weak from fever. You tried everything: warm compresses, poppy syrup, herbs to stimulate the womb. But the baby didn't make it. The mother nearly didn't either. You also remember her mother muttering about omens, when you lit the incense. You're taken to the forum, not to the Senate or court, but worse, the open colonnade where the local magistrate holds sessions. A crowd gathers as you walk. Someone shouts, "Baby killer!" Someone else throws a figure. You catch it midair and take a bite just to irritate them. Tertia trails behind you, face pale. You catch her eye and mouth. Stay calm. The magistrate today is Marcus Pompilius, a man you once caught trying to reheat fish sauce with a candle. He squints at you over a scroll like he can't quite place you. Fulvia, you are accused of using unapproved rituals, foreign herbs, and of interfering with the will of the gods. You raise an eyebrow. Interfering with the will of the gods by trying to stop a woman from bleeding to death? A few in the crowd chuckle. Most don't. The priest lists the items found in your satchel: silphium, pennyroyal, dried beetle shells, and calls them evidence of sorcery. You resist the urge to ask if he's ever actually delivered a baby. He wouldn't get the joke. Did you chant? He demands. Yes, you say, to calm her. Or should I have recited tax law instead? Another ripple of laughter. A woman in the back shouts, "She delivered my baby. He's fine. Fatter than the magistrate." This is how your life gets decided. On the whims of a crowd, a scroll, and whether anyone important is in the mood to defend you. You reach into your bag and slowly, deliberately, pull out your lucky bronze spoon. I've used this in more births than I can count, you say. It's not magic. It's not sacred. It's just mine. But it's helped bring dozens of Romans into this world alive. Then you pull out your wax tablet. I have the names. Every mother, every child, who lived, who didn't. The magistrate frowns. The priest scowls. But the people murmur. They know some of those names. They are some of those names. Finally, the magistrate sighs. No formal charges. But keep your methods modest. He waves you off like a fly. You don't even bow. You just turn and walk out, head high, Tertia scrambling to keep up. Outside, she clutches your arm. I was scared. So was I, you admit. But scared people don't stop births. At home, you sit in silence. The air is heavy, thick with unspoken things. You pull out your herb jars and start checking them one by one. Not because they need it, but because you need it. Because you came close today. Too close. And you're reminded that in Rome, being a midwife means more than knowledge. It means walking a line between life and death, praise and prosecution. Later that night, a woman knocks softly at your door. You expect more trouble. But she smiles shyly and says, "You delivered my cousin's twins. They're loud now, very loud." She hands you a fresh loaf of bread, still warm. You take it with a nod, your fingers brushing hers. "Thank you," she says, "for not giving up." You close the door and lean against it. And for the first time all day, you let yourself breathe. Rome is upside down. You wake to drums, laughter, shouting. Someone is singing off-key about Saturn's sandals. Can only mean one thing. Saturnalia has begun. It's the wildest time of the year. The streets are packed with revelers, garlands looped between buildings, slaves dressed as masters, children throwing flour, and drunken senators handing out cheap coins like it's candy. Because for a few chaotic days, everything in Rome is inverted. And in this mess, you've got 3 clients due. Not 1, not 2, 3. You glance at Tertia, who's already pulling on her boots with that nervous energy that means she suspects what's coming. You barely finish your first mug of barley tea before the first knock comes. "Help!" gasps a curly-haired boy you barely recognize. "My cousin's wife. Her water broke while dancing. She's screaming in the atrium." Of course she is. You grab your satchel, now refilled with clean linens, your bronze spoon, and exactly 1 almond-stuffed date, breakfast, technically, and head out. The atrium is packed with half-dressed partygoers, none of whom seem particularly concerned that a woman is actively in labor on the mosaic floor near a tipped-over bowl of candied nuts. A lute player in the corner stops mid-chord when he sees you. Everyone out. You shout over the din. Unless you're a goddess or a midwife, get moving. They scatter surprisingly fast. Tertia follows you in, hands already reaching for the towels you stuffed in her satchel yesterday, just in case. You knew this day was coming. The woman, Julia, you learn, clutches your wrist like it's the last solid thing in the world. Too early, she moans. It's not time. You check. It is very much time. This baby has no intention of waiting. You work quickly. Warm oil, deep breathing. One shouted order to a man trying to offer incense directly into the woman's face. Baby one, delivered. Slightly purple, but wailing beautifully within moments. You wrap the newborn, hand it to the nearest sober woman, and mop your forehead. One down. You don't make it out of the atrium before a young man bolts in, panting. Are you Fulvia? My wife, she's in the bath. And she won't get out. Oh, fantastic. You hurry across the street, dodging a parade of slaves dressed as senators and one actual senator wearing nothing but a laurel wreath, to find your second client soaking in a steaming bath with 3 attendants fanning her and one eating honeyed figs nearby like this is completely normal. I said I'd relax, she says stubbornly. And I meant it. Out of the bath, you order. Unless you want to give birth underwater like a sea nymph, she protests. You stare. She sighs and stands, grudgingly, and within minutes, labor hits like a thunderclap. Tertia helps with the compresses while you guide the mother onto a folding stool. The room is humid, slippery, and chaotic, but you've done worse. Once you delivered a baby during a flood, on a boat, with a goose honking nearby. This is almost relaxing in comparison. Baby 2, smaller, quieter, but healthy. Mother exhausted but glowing. You leave her in the care of her sister and once again try to go home. You almost make it, until a small girl tugs your tunic and says, "My mama is screaming." You follow her 2 alleys over to a modest insula where the top floor is hot, loud, and blessedly quiet of Saturnalia nonsense. Inside, the third client is pale, gripping her knees. You remember her husband died last month. This will be her first child, and she's alone except for a cousin and a neighbor boy who's hovering awkwardly with a bowl of lentils. This one takes time. The baby is slow to come. The mother is already weak. You press oil-soaked cloths to her thighs, hold her hand when her strength wanes, and whisper every calming phrase you know. Imagine floating, you say, like a little leaf on the Tiber. No hurry, just drifting. Tertia hums a soft tune in the corner. The rhythm is steady, comforting. Finally, the baby arrives. A girl, slippery and silent. Too silent. You work fast, clearing her mouth, rubbing her back, whispering, "Come on, little one, breathe. Just one big cry for me." And she does, high and sharp and furious. The mother sobs. You place the baby on her chest and gently, quietly, exhale everything you've been holding back. 3 births. One day. The Saturnalia gods must be exhausted. 2. That night, back in your taberna, you light a single oil lamp. Tertia is snoring on a pile of folded linen. Your satchel is in a heap, your knees ache. Your back is singing a tragic ballad, and your almond date is now a vague memory. But the babies are breathing. The mothers are alive. And you? You made it through Rome's noisiest, rowdiest, most chaotic holiday with your satchel intact and your heart fuller than it's been in weeks. And now the city quiets. Not all at once, but gradually. The drums fade. The flutes stop. Even the laughter thins into tired chuckles in the distance. You lie back on your straw-filled mat, the linen still warm from your body, and let your breath slow. Outside, the last of the Saturnalia lanterns flicker like soft stars hung just for you. Your fingers are sore, your shoulders heavy, but in the best way. The way they feel after doing something ancient and good. In the next room, Tertia stirs, murmurs something about saffron, then settles again. You smile. The stories of the day drift through your thoughts. Not loudly, not urgently. Just soft images now. A woman dancing before labor. A baby's first breath. A bronze spoon catching the light. You think of the mothers you've helped, the babies you've swaddled, the strange, sacred rhythm of birth and healing and fear and triumph. And you let it all soften, because the city never stops. Rome will shout and clash and feast again tomorrow. But tonight you rest. You lie still, the lamp flickering low. The hum of the street has quieted to a hush. Somewhere a dove coos in a rooftop nest. The breeze through the window is cool and faintly sweet. Your breath deepens. Your limbs grow heavy. The rhythm of your heart matches the rhythm of sleep. And in that stillness, just before dreams arrive, you remind yourself, you are the hands that catch life. And life is quiet now. Good night.